So I'm going to give you not an introduction, but really a hands-on demo of how to get started with EasyBuild. So I have a couple of slides, but I'll be switching back and forth to a terminal as well. Like this, okay. So I'm going to cover a couple of things, really starting from scratch, installing EasyBuild, how you can configure EasyBuild, the basic usage. I've showed some of this morning, but I'll go into a little bit more detail, how the typical workflow is, so how you use the EB command line. What you can do with easy config files, you can just install the ones that are there, you can create your own, you can tweak the ones that are there, even directly from the command line. And then easy config, easy blocks, how all that works. Opening up the black box that people sometimes think EasyBuild is, so you can actually tell what it's going to do before it actually starts doing it. And pretty much in detail, how you deal with problems, and then how you could contribute back on some of the advanced features. So let's start with getting it installed. This is an interesting and a little bit painful topic as well. EasyBuild is written in Python. It's a Python tool, and as some of you may know, getting Python tools installed the way you want them can be tricky or hard. This is one thing that's very much broken about Python, is the whole packaging thing. They have easy install, pip, virtual env, wheels. There's a whole bunch of things going on. And of course, having a tool that makes it easy to install stuff and it itself being hard to install is ridiculous. So when we had the 1.0 release a couple of years back, we were telling people to use easy install, and then we were trying to explain them how to do it, and we quickly got fed up. So what we ended up actually doing is creating a bootstrap script that installs EasyBuild with EasyBuild. So you can just download this. This is in the documentation as well, which is in the link above. You can just download this straight from your browser or using curl, and then you can just run it with Python Bootstrap. You give it a location where EasyBuild should be installed, and then that will give you an EasyBuild module that you can load. So let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, I'm in an empty directory here, so I'm going to start off downloading the Bootstrap script. This is just the standard Python script. You can dive in, see what it does if you want to. It has a help, which is not very verbose, but it has a couple of options, but not a whole lot, basically. So basically how you use this, you just give it a prefix to install in. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to install things here in the directory that I'm in here, so in this demo directory. So it's going to do a three-step bootstrap. The first thing it's going to do is actually download and install one of the Python install tools, so we know what we're dealing with, a specific version of it. In the second step, it's then going to install EasyBuild with this Python install tool, and then the third step, it's going to install EasyBuild with EasyBuild. So the stage 2 is installing EasyBuild with EasyBuild, so then you get the EasyBuild type of output. It's using a temporary installation of EasyBuild in /tmp, and then in the end, we're going to get this module, EasyBuild 270, that we can load and start playing around it. This is going to take a small minute, so I'll get back to this. So basically, this is what we recommend to people to install EasyBuild, because we put a lot of effort in this working everywhere. This even works on a Cray system, and basically any type of Linux distribution, it should work. If you want to, and you want to get full control and you know what you're doing, you can do easy install and pip, and all of that stuff works as well. There's nothing really special there. And once you have EasyBuild and there's a new version of it, you can just update EasyBuild with EasyBuild. So you just load the module you have, you get an easy config file for the new version of EasyBuild, you tell EasyBuild to install it, and then you swap the module and you're updated. Well, if you get back, it should be ready. There it goes. So you get a whole bunch of info output here. Basically what you need to do is you need to do module use. Oh, maybe I should show you what it did. So we were in an empty directory before. Now we have both the bootstrap script, and it's not really well visible. We have a modules directory, which has an all subdirectory, which now has one entry, EasyBuild in this version. So this is the module file. So we can take a look at this. This is just going to be a standard Tickle module file generated by EasyBuild. That's basically just going to make sure the EB command is available in path, and it's going to update Python path as well, because EasyBuild is a Python tool. And then in the software subdirectory, you'll have the same structure, EasyBuild, and then the version. And then here you actually have the EB command and a bunch of scripts. And then in the lib directory, you have the actual EasyBuild installation. So right now, we don't have the EasyBuild module available. We do. OK, so I prepared this. So what you do, you extend your module path to make sure you can load the module. And then you can go ahead, load the EasyBuild module, and you can start using it. So I hope this is easy enough to get it installed. OK. So once you have it installed, you probably want to configure it first before you actually start using it. You can start playing around with it and then clean things up, so it won't go into the wild and start changing things on the system everywhere. By default, it actually goes into your home directory, the .local subdirectory, then EasyBuild in there. This is some kind of standard, the .local. We didn't invent this by ourselves. I think it's a stupid standard, but it's there, so we use it. It's very easy to configure EasyBuild to do other stuff. You can configure it on 3 different levels. You can put configuration files in place, which are just ini-style configuration files, so just key value. You can define environment variables, so EasyBuild _ something, or you can use command line parameters. We have a -- help output, which is very, very long, because it has a lot of options. So this tells you everything you can configure, going from where config files go, to actual things you should be using on the command line, to things like installation prefix, source path, where modules go, how modules look like, yada, yada. There's a whole bunch of things. So these 3 levels, they interact with each other, meaning that if you specify something on the command line, that will always win. So the command line overrules the environment, and the environment overrules configuration files. So you can configure things on different levels, and maybe if you want to make a one-time exception, you can specify it on the command line, and that will win. If you want to do it just for this session you're in, you can define it in the environment, and so on. And with eb-show config, you can ask how it's currently configured. So with this, it will now just show the default configuration, because I haven't really configured this yet. So what it's going to do, it's going to use the .local EasyBuild directory in my home for the build directory, the install directory, so where the software and the modules go. This is the archive of easy config files that were used, so this is now going to be empty or even non-existent. This robot path, I'll get back to this. This is basically where EasyBuild will go and look for easy config files, and you can extend this, you can add your own location, and so on. And this is where it will be looking for source files, so tarballs that it can unpack and start playing around with. You can define environment variables, so let's play with, let's say, install path. So I wanted to install into /tmp. Let's see what else. Okay, I can just show this. So if you define something in the environment, show config will pick it up and will tell you something changed. We have this prefix option, which actually this prefix option applies not only to the installation prefix of software and modules, but also to the build path that EasyBuild is using, so where the temporary build directory goes, also where the sources go, and so on. So if I do this, I will see it is still using the TMP user as install path, because this is in the environment, but then the prefix I provided applies to the build directory, to the prefix itself, to the archive of easyconfig files, the packages directory where sources are being picked up, and so on. So you can see it's very easy to configure EasyBuild beyond the default. Let me unset this one or I'll be in trouble for the rest of the demo. So things should be back to normal now. Okay. Again, this is well covered in the documentation, how the different levels of configuration interact with each other. Some of the command line options, some of the configure options are also listed there, but you really should look at --help. And it's pretty easy to translate a command line option to the corresponding environment variable or to the corresponding entry in the configuration file. So each of the options always have a corresponding environment variable or an entry in the config files. There's no exception. So basic usage, you use the EB command. You list one or more easyconfig files that it should install. So these will tell EasyBuild build GCC version 492 or build Clang on top of GCC 492. You can also give it a directory and it will just pick up all the easyconfig files in the directory, so you don't have to call on command line. You can also just use command line options. So in this case, it will install the latest version of GCC it knows about because you're not specifying a version. And if you want to install a whole software stack in one go with a single command, you can enable the dependency resolution with --robot or -r. So how do you typically work with EB, let's say on a day-to-day basis? You know which install request you get, or you know what to install. So you would ask EasyBuild, do you know about this? Do you know how to install the software package? We have this --S or --search option, which is case insensitive, so you can see whether EasyBuild knows how to install HPL. This will give you a list of easyconfig files it has that match this. So you pick one. Usually you pick one based on the software version and based on the compiler toolchain, so you have to look into the toolchain mechanism or the toolchain thing a little bit first, so you can figure out which toolchain you want to go with. Typically, people start out with using a toolchain that's open source, so GCC, OpenAPI, yada yada, because then everything can be installed by EasyBuild. You can also use the Intel compilers, but then you need to make sure EasyBuild can find the installation files because it cannot download them itself. So in this case, we're going to install HPL 2.1 with this 2016A version of the compiler toolchain. We're going to check first what it's going to do, so which modules it will install and which ones are already there. And if we're happy with this, we will actually go ahead and enable the robot to take care of all the dependencies, and we will enable debug logging as well, just so you have a fat log file later to look into. So let's do that. Let's check if HPL is already here. It's not. Okay, that's a shame. So let's see if EasyBuild knows. Capital S, okay. Let's see if EasyBuild knows about HPL. It does. It has a whole bunch of easyconfig files for HPL. This is not a coincidence because we typically use HPL as a test case for new toolchains. So if new compilers or new MPI come up, we define a new toolchain and then we test if we can build HPL with it. So it's a quick test and it usually tells us very quickly if something is very wrong. So let's go with the FOSS 2016A version. So we just specify this on the EasyBuild command line. And with the dry run option, we're going to ask EasyBuild what it's going to install. So there's a whole bunch of things that are, of course, in the toolchain. So there's, not even all of them are showing up, but there's GCC, which is on top there. OpenBLAS is here, OpenAPI is here, FFTW is here, ScalaPack is there, and then finally you have the toolchain. So all of these are already available, of course, thanks to me preparing the demo. And now HPL itself is missing. So all we need to do is remove the dry run option. Let's add debug logging so I can dive into the log file later. and then it goes. This is the same thing I was showing this morning, so it just builds on top of the toolchain which is already there. So EasyBuild will load the corresponding module for this, which will result in GCC, OpenAPI, yada yada being loaded in the build environment, and then it goes ahead and it builds HPL on top of this. So with that being done, we now have HPL available. So I'm using the default configuration, but the location is not in my module path. So the modules are not showing up for the user. EasyBuild knows where to find them, but the environment is not set up correctly here. So let's just expand the module path with the default location where EasyBuild puts stuff. You can use module use or just straight export module path again, and then we have the module that was installed by EasyBuild in the default location. This is pretty much the workflow you would do if HPL would have dependencies other than the toolchain. It doesn't. So everything it needs is in the toolchain. EasyBuild would have installed the dependencies as well. Okay. So using easyconfig files that are already there, that's very easy and straightforward. Once you know which toolchain you want to use, which software version you want to use, and so on. Now, what if the version I want is not actually there? Or what if I want to use a different toolchain and there's no corresponding easyconfig file for it yet? So what you can do is you can just grab the easyconfig files. EasyBuild will tell you where they are, so you can copy them, start playing around with them, hand change them. For some of the simple and straightforward changes, we actually have command line options. So we have try software version to try and download and build a new software version. And we have try toolchain to try installing something with a different toolchain. The nice thing about the try options is that they work well with the dependency resolution. So say you want to install WRF with a new toolchain, but the dependencies are not there yet with the corresponding toolchain. EasyBuild will know that it needs to install the dependencies first with that toolchain and then get back to WRF. This was tricky to implement, but now it's there and it's really, really useful. A lot of people are relying on this. Of course, for more complex changes like updating individual dependency versions or changing configure options or something like this, you would copy an existing easyconfig file and then start tuning it to your origin. And also for new software packages that EasyBuild does not know about yet, you would compose a new easyconfig file, tell EasyBuild, use this EasyBlock for it. You can download the sources there. And then maybe you want to specify particular build options. So with the 28 generic EasyBlocks we have, those are sufficient to support over 80% of the software. So it's very, very likely you will not have to write a single line of Python. It's possible everything is just there. Especially for standard stuff like configure, make install, you will not have to write any Python at all. Okay. So at some point when your build procedure is complex enough, you may have to start worrying about easy blocks. Now, there's no clear line when you start writing an easy block or when you can get away with doing easy config files. Easy config files offer lots of options for you. You can specify configure options just in the easy config file as a string. You can pass extra arguments to the make to like overwrite CC or overwrite C flags or stuff like this. So for all of that, you don't have to write an easy block. If WRF changes their build procedure, like suddenly they start using CMake because they think it would be a good idea, then you would have to at least update the WRF easy block. So you could probably not do this, at least not in a clean way, in an easy config file. You could hack your way around it. So at some point, you need to start worrying about easy blocks. So typically, we do this when certain parameters in the easy config file, like build options or configure options, are critical for the build to be correct. So you want to make sure they are always there. Then you do it once in the easy block in the Python module, and then all the easy config files don't have this specified, but it's used over and over again. Same thing if certain things are dependent on the toolchain, so dependent on the compiler or dependent on the MPI. You might have to pass a different configure option. You can put the logic that explains EasyBuild what to do in the easy block, and then the easy configs just say, use this toolchain, and EasyBuild will know what to do. Same applies to other dependencies. And then if you feel you're working around EasyBuild in the easy config file, because you can just hand edit and sometimes escape some of the things that EasyBuild is doing, then if you want to do it cleanly, you should probably start looking at easy blocks instead. Okay, and another very nice option is the extended dry run. So this will actually give you a pretty good overview of what EasyBuild is going to do and how it's going to do it. This is very recent, and a lot of people were asking for this, and I long figured it would be either very difficult to implement it or not very useful in practice, because getting this 100% accurate is difficult. Sometimes certain actions in the build procedure that you need to do depend on which files are there, or depend on, after running make, what ends up there in the build directory, and you have to react to it. If you want to do a quick overview in like a matter of seconds, you can't really do this, because just compiling is going to take way too long, and you want quicker feedback. So it's never going to be 100% correct, but in practice it turns out it's close enough that you get a pretty good view of what's going on, or also of the effect of changing some parameters in EasyBuild, so how it's going to affect the actual build procedure. So that's very useful. So let's take a quick look at what would happen if EasyBuild wants to install WRF. So I don't have it here yet. I think I have a dry run. So this is the normal dry run. This will tell me what is missing in terms of modules that it needs. Let me do this again so I can scroll through it. So I don't have the FOSS 2015A toolchain available, so none of them are marked as X here, so this is pretty much everything is missing. I'm not going to install all of these here, especially not because it starts with building GCC. This would take a little bit too long. Basically, everything is missing, and okay, we would have to start from scratch. Now, what I can do, I can ask EasyBuild with extended dry run or just minus capital X, what it's going to do for WRF. It's not going to tell me here all of the dependencies. I can make it do it, but for now I'm just going to take a look at how it would install WRF itself. There's a wall of text here like yada yada, this is not always correct, take this into account. Then if you scroll through this, it will actually go through each of the steps, like fetching. Fetching, I'm going to consider these download URLs. I will need this source file, and I already found it at the standard location, so good, I won't have to download it. There's a bunch of patch files listed in the easy config files, so I will have to apply them, and I found them at this location, so you can check the patch files if you want to. Then it will go ahead and create the build directory. It will reset the environment. Some of these things probably don't do a lot, so they may be skipped, or the dry run doesn't really give you a lot of details on them, but that's fine. It will make sure the checksums, well, it will try and check the checksums, but it doesn't know what the checksum should be, so this is going to be skipped pretty much. Then it's going to untar the sources, apply all the patch files. It's going to derive the patch level based on the patch file. It can only do this if it has the unpacked sources, which is being skipped here. So the dry run just tells you here the patch level is going to be derived at runtime. Lots of long commands because of the annoyingly long paths here, but that's okay. And then it's going to start preparing the environment, which means it's going to load the module that corresponds to the toolchain, which is this one, FOSS 2015A. It says simulated here because this module is actually not there, but it knows what should be there. So it can tell you. So if the module would be there, it would just load it, and these would be loaded automatically. Because it's not there, it's actually also telling you which GCC MPI modules would be loaded along with it. So it's smart enough to simulate all of these. Same thing for the dependencies. It would load the corresponding modules. It tells you what the current list of loaded modules is, because these are simulated. This is pretty really short, of course. It's going to define the build environment. So the build environment is determined based on the toolchain you are using. So things like CC will be set to GCC because the compiler toolchain is a GCC-based toolchain. It's going to tell you the C flags it's going to use. So the mArch native is what EasyBuild does by default. It targets the system you're building on. You can tell it not to, but in this case, it's configured to do so. It has a whole bunch of, let's say, non-standard environment variables that you can use in make files or in your easyconfig file, like pointing to the location of laypack or FFT and so on. MPI commands, all of this stuff is there. Then, in this case, and this is done by the EasyBlock, the WRF EasyBlock, you need to point WRF where netcdf and where some of the other dependencies are. So this is how EasyBuild is going to do it. It's going to define this based on the location where netcdf was installed by EasyBuild. It's going to set this magic environment variable as well, otherwise it doesn't support large files. Okay. So then it's basically going to run the interactive configure script. So it says it's an interactive command. It doesn't give details here about how it's going to answer the questions, but it knows how to do it. So you won't have to answer the questions yourself. EasyBuild will do that for you. And then it tells you, I have this configure.war file, I'm going to patch it, I'm going to make sure all of these are actually defined correctly. So whatever is there, I'm just going to skip it, and I'm going to inject this C flags thing there. Good, excellent. And it's going to run the compile script, not only for WRF, but also for 2 test cases. I still don't know why this is, but WRF comes with certain utilities, and they only get built if you build a test case. Okay, let me just build a test case. It also runs a test here. The driver doesn't tell me. This may be because of something in EasyBlock that's not 100% right. But for WRF, we actually download one of the benchmarks as well, and we run it after the installation, just to make sure that WRF runs in parallel and things like this. It's a small benchmark, so it's okay to do it during the installation. Yeah, there are lots of skipping here. WRF doesn't have an actual install step, so nothing is being copied out cleanly, at least not yet. This could be fixed in the EasyBlock. And then it says, during the sanity check, I'm going to make very sure that all of these binaries are there. They're called .exe, but that's not EasyBuild's fault. And it's going to make sure these 2 directories are there and that they are non-empty. No sanity check commands in this case. And then clean up, yada, yada. And it shows you the module file, or close to the module file that it would generate. So the module file itself will also load the toolchain, because you may have libraries that are required at runtime and so on. Same for dependencies. And then a bunch of environment variables being defined, like this netcdf thing, which may be important at runtime, setting the path correctly, so it's not as simple as bin, but it's somewhere else. And then we're pretty much done. So this gives you a lot of detail on what EasyBuild is going to do. And you can inspect this and just make sure that it does what you expect it to do, or if there's something you don't like, you can figure out how to tweak it and then check again with -x whether your change is actually has the effect that you expect it to be. So it's very good for debugging. If you're writing new EasyBlocks or changing EasyBlocks, you can actually in a matter of seconds, you can check whether your changes make sense, whether EasyBuild doesn't crash, stuff like this. Tweaking parameters, tweaking options, and also giving new users more confidence about using EasyBuild. People don't like dealing with a black box. They want to figure out what it's going to do before it actually does it. So you could just do the build, wait for 1 hour, and check the log file, but that's not very convenient. So this was just implemented by popular request. We don't need this because we're familiar enough with EasyBuild. We know what's going on. But for other people, this is very useful. Okay. Then dealing with errors. So unfortunately, EasyBuild is not perfect. It probably never will be. There's so much software support, and just bumping a version, usually it works, but if you change something in the build procedure, then either EasyBuild is going to fail with a clear error message, or it may go down pretty hard, depending on what changed. So you'll need to deal with this every now and then. So one of the issues we have a lot is the failing to download tarballs, either because something's wrong upstream or because the mirror is broken that you're using or anything. So you can easily fix this by just downloading manually and copying it to the EasyBuild source path. EasyBuild will check first if it's there, and only if it's not there, it will try to download it. So if it finds it, it's happy. Building old software versions on recent systems. So we got people to complain about building GCC 4.2 or 3 on CentOS 7, for example. Hey, it's not working, EasyBuild is broken. No, I mean, EasyBuild, GCC was never meant to, or at least that version of GCC was never meant to build on a new system, and this is not something EasyBuild can fix. So in terms of pointers there, maybe consider using a newer version, unless you have a very good reason to use the old one. And very often other people have run into it, so just hit Google, figure out, copy-paste the error message, and usually there's like an extra configure flag or something. So building old GCC versions with a newer GCC, it can get interesting. Sometimes you have missing dependencies because whoever was working on the easyconfig file just had stuff installed in the OS and EasyBuild was finding them there and it was happy. But then if somebody else tries to do the installation, they have a missing dependency. Either it's going to give you a nasty error message or the configure script is going to tell you, hey, this thing is missing, please make sure it's there. So you may need to either report the problem or try fixing it yourself and telling us what the patch was that you tried. Or you may be hitting a known or unknown bug in EasyBuild, so you can check into that, whether it's a known issue or not. So usually what you do is you check the error message, you try and figure it out. If you have to, you can dive into the log file. And we have some documentation on how the log file is structured to help you with that. And if you're really stuck, just reach out to the community. Get on the mailing list, get on IRC, there's always somebody there. We have people from Canada to New Zealand, so there's always somebody awake. We have conf calls every other week, where we, after some updates on the recent developments, we just open up to questions and anyone can say, hey, I have this problem, and maybe somebody else has already figured it out or has some pointers. And all of this information is also in the documentation. And then to contribute back, so if there are things you had to change, or if there are easyconfig files you had to update for new versions, for new tool chains, whatever, even if it was just a version bump, a very easy one, it's always worth the trouble to contribute back, because then for the next person it's going to be even easier. They won't even have to bump the version anymore. So this is really why EasyBuild is getting so big and has so much supported software, is because people are sending us back patches, sending us back easyconfig files. We double check them to make sure they work, and if they work, we just include them in the release, and it gets fatter and fatter every time. Also, other forms of contributing back are just reporting bugs, saying stuff doesn't work for you. If you don't report them, we don't know about them, we can fix them. Or also just ideas for maybe EasyBuild could do this in this way or support this particular feature. It really boils down to sharing your expertise, because you're relying on the expertise of others, and if you share as well, you're just enhancing the tool and certainly helping out others as well. So we especially like contributions for new software packages, for new versions, or if something has to change to build it with newer compilers, newer MPI, and so on. Also for compilers and MPI and stuff that are really low in the stack, we try to pay close attention. Like every new Intel update, or in a week or so, we have new easyconfig files for that. And we try to get them ready by the next release of EasyBuild, so you can switch to the newer compilers if you're up for that. You do need some knowledge about using Git and GitHub for that to contribute back. We're actually trying to get rid of this. So we have this new pull request, new PR, and update PR options on the EasyBuild command line that you can actually send patches straight from the command line. It's still in experimental mode, so it is there in the release, but you have to enable an experimental flag and play around with it a little bit. But this basically avoids that you need to do any Git or even any GitHub at all. It will just talk to the GitHub API, send patches, you can update pull requests, and so on. So we're working on this to lower the bar for people to contribute, which is probably only going to make our number of open pull requests go up. Again, this has some documentation. This is still in the old documentation, so it hasn't been ported to read the docs yet, but it's there. And this contributing back is a detailed walkthrough of all the Git commands and all the GitHub clicks you have to do to contribute back. Once you're used to it, it's pretty easy. So some of the advanced features. And let me actually start with this one. So stable support for installing software on Cray systems, because I want to start something to show you. So what we do here on Cray systems, usually we install the toolchain first, so GCC, MPI, and so on, and then start from there. On the Cray system, this does make a lot of sense because you have this custom interconnect, and Cray provides all of these modules and this programming environment for you, and redoing that is just it's very difficult. So the environment you end up in when you log into a Cray system is this, except for the EasyBuild module, maybe. So you have like 25 modules loaded, and it sets up the whole environment, and you're supposed to, as a user, deal with this. So yeah, try building and installing something like WRF in an environment like this if you're not familiar with it. It's already hard enough, and then you get this on top. So what we did together with the people at CSCS is to let actually EasyBuild take care of this. So what I'm going to do is let me try and install WRF. It's not there yet. I can show you that so you believe me. So WRF itself is not there. I do have these modules, so I did some preparations, of course. So EasyBuild is there, and the dependencies that are required for WRF are there, at least the ones that are not provided by Cray through modules. And we have this toolchain, this Cray-specific toolchain module as well. So basically, what we did here, we're not installing our own GCC, or not installing our own API. We're basically just loading the Cray modules. So we load the programming environment that Cray provides for GNU. So for GCC, we load a particular version of the GCC compiler, and then we make sure the right MPage version and the right lib size, so this is last layback stuff, are loaded as well. And we make sure none of the conflicting programs modules are loaded. So figuring out all of this was not easy, because on Cray, you have to be really careful when dealing with the modules. Like module purge is just impossible on Cray. You will break your environment and you're lost. You have to log in again. It's beyond fixing. Loading, we learned the hard way that loading the programming environment, this has a version as well, but it's not wise to load the version. You just have to rely on the default and always load the most recent version. So that's what you should be doing. Also, swapping here doesn't really work, so you have to load and unload rather than swap. And okay, once we had all this figured out, it's there, EasyBuild does the right thing, and we stop caring. So this is the toolchain we're going to use to build WRF. If I do the dry run, that is going to show me what it's going to install. So it's going to use this toolchain. There's a bunch of dependencies that EasyBuild will take care of, or in this case already has taken care of. And then the other stuff like MPI and compiler are provided by the Cray toolchains. So let this run. It's going to take a while, but it should work. And in the meantime, I guess I can take questions. Yes?
Question about the version of environment modules. So what is the default, Tickle or Elmo?
The default right now is still Tickle.
Is it possible just to bootstrap that Elmo becomes default from the very beginning? My intention
Yes.
to have
Yes.
hierarchy of modules.
Yes. You can, well, actually, all of the configure options for EasyBuild, you can define them before running the bootstrap. And then in the second step, building EasyBuild with EasyBuild, it will use lmod and even generate modules and Lua syntax, or use a different naming scheme. You can do all of that. Yeah.
So the bootstrap is able to build Lua.
Well, no, lmod has to be there right now. So the modules tool has to be there. There's actually somebody working on enhancing the bootstrap, so all you need is a compiler. The EasyBuild knows how to install Python, but yeah, there's tricky there. Usually through the OS, it's okay. And actually, so Elmod has a tarball of Lua together with some of the extensions that are required for it. Yeah, use the tarball that Elmod provides. That just works. The extensions are included in there. And then it's configure, make, install. It's also in the EasyBuild documentation. If you want to install Elmod without having admin rights, without having Lua, it will tell you what to do. Yes? How difficult is it to upgrade the compiler toolchain, you mean? It depends. So if I guess you're hinting towards going to something like GCC 5 or, it depends on the tools themselves. So just making EasyBuild try to build on top of a new toolchain is trivial. The try toolchain thing and doing it with the robot enabled, it will try everything. It's called try for a reason. I mean, if the tools are not ready for being built with GCC 5, maybe because they're checking the major version number, or they probably are, then it crashes there and you have to go in and somehow patch it or fix that. So, yeah, it really depends on the tool. Some tools don't really care and do the right thing, and other tools do crazy checks that are irrelevant. Like the China example I gave this morning, it checks for Python 2.7.3. If it's a different version, it says, I cannot do anything, which doesn't make any sense. I guess it depends on the OS you're using as well. So Pablo, for example, is still sticking to a very old toolchain. Well, very old. It's GCC 4.7 something. He's very happy with it because everything that he tries to build usually builds with it, so it's okay. If he's going to a newer OS, he's going to run into problems just because of the GCC not working there. So it really depends on the OS you plan to use. On the EasyBuild side, it's easy. On the tools itself, who knows? Yeah. I need one more question. It's not done yet. Anyway, it's going to work. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Is there an easy way of switching between those sort of dependent libraries that you don't different versions of lots of, because there's frequently 5 or 6 libraries which do
Yeah.
and they're sort of dependent on each other. Is there an easy way of handling that when you're developing rather than when you're just
It depends on what you mean by easy. I mean, changing configure options is just changing one line in the easyconfig file. What I would typically do in a situation like this, I would install the libraries in a temporary location, and then when I'm happy with them, I would enable the release mode and then rebuild in the real location. So EasyBuild doesn't care where things are installed. If it can see the module, it's happy. And you can just expand your module path and load from different locations. It doesn't really care. So if you organize yourself well, then I guess it's pretty easy. Yeah. You can just build in a temporary location. If you're happy, enable the release mode, build again, which is easy enough. You just tell EasyBuild what to do. And, yeah.
I'm just thinking that do you have to keep modifying the EasyBuild configure files?
We have something, we have next to try toolchain and try software version, we have try amend, which is like you can specify extra lines for the easyconfig file, which EasyBuild will just inject before it builds. But it's let's say it's not perfect. For simple things like changing dependency versions, you may be able to get away with it. Adding configure options certainly works. It depends on what you're doing. It also depends on how the easyconfig file was written. So whether the logic in it makes sense to override something, depends. But this is actually something we're trying to improve on. So you can easily just add a small file or even on the command line say, next to what you're planning to do standard, do this on top and then go. So there's things already being worked on there. But it's nothing final yet. Yeah. Yeah. I guess try-amend would help you there. Try-amend will work together with robot and we'll apply it everywhere. Yeah. Okay, it's finished. Good. If there's anyone else who can build and install WRF on a Cray system in less than 5 minutes, let me know. Okay, thank you.